What do you get if you take the winning formula of Dark Souls, take away your shield, and add Victorian gothic weirdness? Arguably the best game of the PlayStation 4 is what? Hi, I'm Kate, and I didn't finish Bloodborne, but I sure am going to review it. Please enjoy.
Oh, cease this dithering. Take the plunge. Throw yourself to the wolves.
After an extremely sketchy blood transfusion, you awaken trapped in the city of Yharnam on the night of the Endless Hunt. When beasts roam the streets, the few remaining citizens barricade themselves in their homes, and the hunters come out to play. But this night does not end. The moon hangs forever still in the sky. The beasts keep eating, and the old blood calls.
Oh, I know. You think now to betray me.
No, but you will never listen. I tell you, I will not forget our adage.
We are born of the blood, made men by the blood, undone by the blood. Our eyes are yet to open.
Fear the old blood.
Without spoiling too much, Bloodborne starts off with gothic horror werewolves, wolfmen, and blood-mad hunters, but this is just the beginning. It keeps on getting weirder and more horrific and alien from there. Aside from the Chalice dungeons, the level design is impeccable, with so many cool environments, hidden paths, hidden items, shortcuts, secrets, and environmental storytelling. It's right at the pinnacle of From Software level design, and is a big part of what makes their games so good. Same goes for the enemy and boss design, and the subtle exposition-light storytelling and world building. Lore here is hinted at in environmental details, item descriptions, and cryptic NPC dialogue, not force-fed to you. It's subtle and ignorable if you want, but deliciously gripping and the richest and most interesting yet in a FromSoft game. Subverting Lovecraftian tropes while skewing to unsettling horror themes, you should experience yourself without spoilers. This is a story that is meticulously crafted and exquisitely written, then presented in a way that makes you unravel it for yourself, and it is infinitely better for that.
Welcome home, good hunter. What is it you desire? But do the gods love their creations? I am a doll created by you humans. Would you ever think to love me? Of course. I do love you. Isn't that how you've made me?
Combat is tight and crisp. Even with the game being locked at 30 FPS, it feels great. It's designed to be slightly faster than a typical Souls game, and to encourage you to be way more aggressive. Between the lack of blocking, the dodge being a quick dash in any direction instead of a roll, lots of enemies being staggered if you can hit them first depending on your weapon, and recent damage to your health refilling by hitting enemies, you're rewarded for playing quite aggressively. And once you retrain your brain to get used to not having a block button, it all comes together beautifully to create perhaps the most satisfying combat system in any Souls game. One unique feature of Bloodborne is that all primary weapons are what it calls trick weapons. Basically, they transform into two different modes with the L1 button, giving you different movesets, reach, speed, damage types, or otherwise changing. For instance, the weapon you see me using in a lot of this footage, the Kirkhammer, transforms from a fast one-handed short sword to a slower but highly staggering, massive two-handed blunt hammer. An axe becomes a poleaxe, a cane becomes a whip, a dagger breaks apart into two daggers, a special mace lights up with electricity. There's a ton of different weapons, and they all do something different and cool, and transforming adds a lot of different combat options for you without having to swap weapons. And in your offhand slot, most characters will be carrying a gun of some type for a secondary weapon, although there are some other more niche or esoteric options. Your pistol is what you generally use to parry in Bloodborne. A perfectly timed shot, even if it doesn't do much damage, will parry an enemy attack, staggering them into the state that you can get them with a highly damaging visceral hit. This basically replaces the shield parries of most Souls games, and is very effective even if your build doesn't focus on guns, assuming you can get the timing right. Healing is through blood vials this time instead of Estus flasks. The downside is that they're consumable. They have to be farmed from enemies or purchased. The upside, however, is that you can carry up to 20 at once, and they are a very common enemy drop, so you can afford to heal a lot more often, sustaining yourself longer and keeping your health topped up better. Bullets work the same, with an added feature that lets you sacrifice a chunk of health to make a few more out of thin air if you're desperate. The difficulty of this game is probably just a little bit harder than Dark Souls or Elden Ring overall, but still quite a bit easier than Sekiro. This is not an easy game. It is fairly difficult and punishing, but not unfair or unapproachable, and very rewarding. The co-op is fairly similar to how Dark Souls works. You can summon in another player by spending an insight to ring a bell and get help fighting a boss, but there are some changes that make it harder to get a match than Dark Souls. Both the summoner and the summoned have to be in close to the same place at the same time, each using their respective bell. You can't just drop down a summon sign on the ground and walk away. That, the game's age, and the level restrictions on matchmaking make it slower and more difficult to find someone to help you a lot of the time. There are also occasional NPC summons, like in most Souls games, but they're sparse and unreliable, and might not appear where they should, depending on what else you've done in the game quest/boss-wise. And having a helper absolutely does make a difficult boss exponentially easier. At the very least, they'll distract the boss's attention for a while so that you can stab it in the ass. PvP-wise, while they technically exist, invasions aren't as much of a thing in my experience. You can generally only be invaded while you have someone else summoned, but not once you've entered the boss arena. And there's also a bell-ringing enemy that spawns in the level somewhere that you can kill to prevent getting invaded. So PvP is pretty rare, unless you seek it out. I think I've been invaded once that I can recall. And, of course, Bloodborne continues the Souls tradition of players being able to leave notes on the ground everywhere for each other, and of blood-stained specters that show how other people died. So, does it have any flaws? Of course it does. It is definitely in need of a remaster, and ports to other platforms. And Chalice dungeons are pretty dull and repetitive, and there are other minor nitpicks, but overall, Bloodborne is a true masterpiece, and these don't detract from it. Why didn't I finish Bloodborne? I got stuck, sadly. My original and most progressed character, from when I last played a couple years ago, is stuck on Kos, the final boss of the DLC. My very fun skill arcane Blade of Mercy build was poorly matched for his range and speed, and he is a damn hard boss to begin with. And it also didn't help that I accidentally entered New Game Plus before I had meant to, so that my very first attempt at the DLC was much harder than it should have been. Minor spoiler, be warned that when Gehrman offers you a choice, the option of giving in to him immediately skips the last couple bosses and enters New Game Plus. Will I finish the game with that character? Probably not. But I have recently started playing again, with a brand new character, a strength build this time, and so far it's going really well. Let's see how far I get on this one. If you have the opportunity to, you should absolutely try Bloodborne. Its Souls-like difficulty may deter some, but it's one of the best of the bunch, and absolutely worth your time. Just keep your wits about you, and mind that secrets are secret for a reason. Don't worry, whatever happens, you may think it all a mere bad dream.
Oh, amygdala! Oh, amygdala! Have mercy on the poor bastard!